people who end up on the street have always, and like most of us are actual victims of some extreme abuse or some form of trauma, and all of us get judged because of it. Whether or not, oh, they're on the street because of drugs. It's we're on the street because something bad happened to us that we can't let go of or we can't move on from.
Can we start now?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Can you give me your name?
Yep. My name is Taylor Horner. For what it's been the last 7 years, going on 8 years, I've been living on the street. But before then, my entire childhood, and I can't say it's been a horrible childhood. For the first 10 years of my life, it was actually really great. I had my grandfather, who was the idol of my life, taught me my morals, my respect, dignity, pride. 2004 was when everything drastically changed because he passed away. And that's when I started getting diagnosed with severe social anxiety, PTSD, depression.
Your grandfather died when you were how many years old?
I was 9 years old, and it took a real hard hit for me because me and him were inseparable. He basically raised me for the first 9 to 10 years of my life. Anytime I was off school, it was, I want to go see my grandpa, and I basically lived with them for that timeline.
Your grandpa is your father's side or mother's side?
My mom's. My dad's side, I was not allowed to be a part of because he was very abusive towards my mother and myself and my two brothers. So my mom did the right thing, took him to court, and got him booted out of our lives. But being a daddy's girl, that was extremely hard on me because I could no longer see my dad, but it was, my mom had to make a choice of keep her kids safe or be with someone that she thought she loved. And she chose me and my two brothers, which my mom has to be one of the biggest idols of my life on how to be a strong, independent woman. Because she taught me that I don't need a man to stand on my own 2 feet. And I strongly have to thank her for that. That was when the actual abuse that I could remember happening. My biological father, his side of the family were alcoholics, drug addicts, smokers, you name it, they've done it. When my dad, the biggest abuse that I could remember was when my dad came home one day after work, and he had had one too many drinks. He ended up getting really high on cocaine, and he ended up putting 2 cigarettes out on my body when I was about 4 years old. One in the center of my chest and one on my underarm. He ended up also going after my older brother, and picking him up by the throat and slamming him out against a corner of a wall, which could have almost paralyzed him. And once my mom found this out, that's when she kicked him out of our lives. And it hurt at first, because I was wondering always, where'd my daddy go and everything. So, and my mom really couldn't explain how she had to get rid of him. But after that, she found my stepdad, which I became so strongly attached to. He was the best man for her. I started seeing happiness in my mom again. And we, being kids, we tested him, right? Like, we wanted to see if he was actually gonna stay. So we would push and push and push. And he stayed. Even to this day, he's still married to my mom. And after my grandfather passed away in 2004, my one uncle saw an opportunity that I wish upon no one. And he started sexually abusing me. And I don't know why. I don't know what the reason was for.
So how that happened?
That happened from the age of 10 to 16. And it
When is the first time? Can you remember the details?
I was 9 years old, just about to turn 10. And being an uncle, you should feel safe enough to go up and ask for help. And he couldn't. It was always, well, if I help you, what are you gonna do for me? So all of a sudden, next thing you know, my uncle is bringing me down to the basement where he was sleeping in the same house my grandfather passed away in. And he started undressing me, and he ended up molesting me for the first time ever. And it was petrifying. Like, I was so scared. I couldn't scream. I couldn't fight back. I couldn't do anything. And I was so afraid to tell my mom or my grandmother, because I was such an outdoorsy kid. I liked to go outside and play with my friends. I liked to go to the recreational center with my brothers and go swimming and stuff like that, right? But when that started happening, I just started pulling back from the family. And me and my mom have not had a good relationship since then. So that would be about 16 to 18 years ago. Me and my mom we haven't had any form of relationship.
So you said from 9 years old to 16. So this uncle abused you so many times?
Yeah.
Like how often?
It would probably be almost once a week.
All happening in the house?
Yeah. And my issue was that it happened even though my grandmother was in the house at the same time. And nobody noticed the emotional and mental change that it had on me. Cause I loved going out playing sports with my friends. I loved playing sport, like, I used to play football with my brothers, and I used to get them into soccer, and it got to the point where we even got into mixed martial arts together just so we could actually, like, get into fights with each other without getting into trouble. And it was, like, it's sibling rivalry that we get to beat up on each other without really getting into trouble by mom and dad. But after that, it just seemed like we all started drifting apart after my grandfather died.
So from year of your age of 9 to 16, 7 years, no
Yeah.
one ever noticed, or someone no?
I don't know if nobody ever noticed because my grandmother was a registered psychiatric nurse for about 40 to 50 years. So I'm pretty sure she realized the change and she realized what was going on. But it being her youngest son doing it, they all went to denial. And every time I brought it up to them, they wouldn't do anything about it. It's made it really hard for me to trust my grandmother and my mother at that point.
Could you describe what kind of person your uncle was?
Honestly, at first he just comes across as like the atypical, normal businessman who's literally all about getting the job done and then trying to basically get any woman's pants. Why he decided to go after. What mainly happened was he was making advancements at my younger cousin. And she was only a year younger than me, but I didn't want her to get hurt because me and her were like sisters. So I stepped in the middle and I was like, no, if you're gonna prey on her, it's not gonna happen. So I stepped in the way. I'm like, if you're gonna be a predator, you're gonna have to you're gonna have to do like I'm gonna be the one getting in the middle of it.
So when you were 9, how old was your uncle?
My uncle would have been 27.
Okay.
And stuff like that just doesn't, it's not a choice.
Yeah. From 9 years old to 16, have you ever pregnant?
I ended up pregnant once, and I know it sounds odd, but I asked one of my friends to push me down a set of stairs to cause a miscarriage. Because I didn't want to be a 10-year-old, 10, 11-year-old mom at the time. Because I was so heavy into sports, and I wouldn't be able to even look at that child without seeing constant reminder of abuse.
You asked a friend to push you off the stairs.
Yeah.
Then what happened?
They asked me why. I didn't tell them, I refused to tell them exactly why, so I started saying certain things that I knew would make her angry enough at me that would push me backwards down the set of stairs.
Then you got an injury?
Yeah, that was the first time that I ended up with a couple of fractured ribs. And
Then you also miscarried.
yeah, because I didn't want to have to tell my mom that I had gotten pregnant with her younger brother's child. And
Nobody know you miscarried.
no,
Okay. You were 11 years old.
yeah. My family really did choose to be oblivious to it. And
Your uncle know?
no. I did not want to even let him even catch a scent that I was pregnant. So afterwards, it got to the point where it was like, enough's enough. I forced to sit down, like, just a small family gathering between my mom, me, my uncle, and my grandmother, where we were all living under the same roof. And he started telling me and started literally bawling his eyes out, telling me that if I want to leave, I can just leave, and you won't have to see me again. I'm like, that's not true, because the moment I leave, my grandmother would just let him move back in. And this was when I lost all respect for my grandmother, was because she ended up stating, you know what, no, you are my son. You are not going anywhere. And it really disgusted me for my grandmother and my mother to protect someone who just molested their daughter and granddaughter. And I don't know what happened with my mom, but she was present there.
So your mom also got abused by someone? Or
My mom
she couldn't make a sound in the family?
My mom tries to comfort me by telling me that they also got sexually abused.
You mean she also got sexually abused?
Yeah.
By whom?
That I wouldn't be able to tell you. It'd probably be one of my great aunts or uncles. And I I couldn't understand why a mother would allow something like this after being told that, hey mom, this is what's happening, I need help, I need protection. She waited till my grandmother was done her back surgery and she moved me into the same house that all this was happening. So it hurt. I kept looking, it did hurt. Because it felt like my mom was choosing a predator over her daughter. My grandmother ended up having a back surgery about 10 or 15 years ago. My older brother was living in the same house with her at the time, but he wouldn't be there to take care of her. So my mom got me to move into the house. And after that, that was just before I came out and told my mom and my grandmother about the sexual abuse. But even though I told them that, they refused to let me move back out. So the abuse became worse.
Oh, how old were you?
At that point I was 13. Cause
What do you mean get worse?
my uncle started treating it like prostitution. If I needed anything, like if I needed money to go pick up some things for school, it would be like, okay, I'll give you this much if you do this to me or for me. And I didn't know what to do. Most of the men in my family are 6 to 6'2", about maybe about no more than 200 pounds. So when my uncle first made the first full-blown molestation, he had his whole body weight pressed on me, so I couldn't fight back.
That, which is when you were 13 years old?
Yeah. He waited till apparently, I looked at it as he waited till my grandfather passed away, because my grandfather is not only my grandfather, he's my godfather, because I was born and raised Catholic. And he was very protective of me. Anytime somebody hurt me, my grandfather dealt with it, whether it be one of his own kids or someone else. And when he passed away, I think that's when my uncle saw his opportunity to start actually harming the juvenile in the family.
Yeah, that's from you were 9 years old.
Yeah.
Then when you were 13 years old, you moved back to your grandma's house.
Yes.
Then things getting worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It started out with him groping me. It got to the point where he was actually going out of his way and like buying lingerie and going to the adult shops and stuff like that for restraints and everything like that, to where any way, shape, or form I wouldn't be able to fight back. He could just have his entire way with me.
You mean he'll buy those kind of sex toys?
Yeah, he quite enjoyed buying two sets of handcuffs so he could strap my ankles and wrists to the bed and stuff like that, and just do whatever he wanted to me. And then that's when I started actually taking my grandmother's Oxycontins and her morphine pills, because it numbed the pain. Like, it numbed what I was going through. And I thought that if I told my mother or my grandmother, they wouldn't believe me, because he was the youngest of them all, of 8 kids. So after that, it just got, my fear is what really gained more control over me than anything. 16 years old is when I met the father of my daughter. And it stopped, but it didn't really stop. It got to the point where I kept the back door of my grandmother's house unlocked. Texted my baby dad, told him it's happening now. And he only lived a couple of blocks away from me, so he ended up running all the way down. And he pulled out a 5-inch flip buck knife and held it to my uncle's throat and told him that she's coming with me, and if you don't let her, you're gonna regret it, right? So he got me out, and for about 7 years after that, he made sure that, because I was supposed to go to the police at that time, because my boyfriend at the time had convinced me to talk to my mom before going down to the police station, just to let them know what was going on. And then my mom had convinced me, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to sit down with your grandmother, with your uncle, with me and your father, and we're going to figure this out. So we do that, but then my grandmother and my mother both strongly requested that I would not. Nobody would believe me. And I believed them, because that's my mom and my grandmother. And then they told me that there was a 2-year statute of limitations on child molestation. And I felt so hopeless, so lost, so, like, I didn't feel like I had anybody there to protect me. And it got so bad that I didn't want to go home. I'd start running away. But whenever I got pregnant with my daughter, when me and my boyfriend at the time were having some fun around between Christmas and New Year's in 2010, was whenever me and him had conceived my daughter that I have now. But that's also when the emotional abuse started from him. And it was always, you're not attractive, nobody would want you, like, you're pathetic, you're a cow, stuff like that. Like, started to make me feel like I wasn't worthy of anybody. And that was basically what my biological father did to my brothers, kind of beating on me, to my uncle, to even my mom at times, because I was raised with like no emotional or mental support, and I didn't trust any counselors, so I never went to go see them. And it's just, it gets hard because after all of that, I had to make the biggest and most toughest decision of my life, and that was to place the care of my daughter into her father's life. And it was literally just to keep her safe. Because she started getting to that age where my uncle started preying on her. And that's when I became flagged as a suicide risk.
Say it again. When your daughter.
When my daughter got to about the age of 8, I started noticing my uncle was making passes at my daughter.
How describe?
Kind of rubbing her waist, letting her climb all over him, and grabbing her by the insides of the thighs and everything like that. And at that point, my current husband was already in my life, and when I noticed that, I got so scared that he actually had to stop me from jumping out of a third-story window. Because I didn't know what to do anymore. Because my mom was letting this happen again. My grandmother was, and they were keeping my stepdad out of the picture so he wouldn't know. And I couldn't understand why a mother would let this happen to their child. Because parents are there to protect their kids, to make sure that they're not in harm's way.
You jumped out from a third.
From a third-story window, yeah. Because I got into such a psychosis that I felt so helpless.
What happened?
My the reason that led to that was I ended up walking in on my uncle trying to bathe my daughter. And I taught my daughter well enough how to bathe her private parts and everything like that, to where I didn't even have to be in there with her. And I walked in one day and he was doing it for her. And it scared me so bad that I let my mom take my daughter out of town for the weekend to go visit some in-laws on my stepdad's side. Then, if my husband wasn't there 30 seconds sooner, I wouldn't be here to this day. Or I'd be more or less paralyzed from the waist down. And I couldn't handle that.
So your husband stopped you.
My husband saved my life. And he ended up asking me if I wanted him to deal with it, or if I wanted to go to the police station and tell them my story and have see if they can actually deal with it properly. So anybody in my family who knew, going from my mom to my grandmother, right down to the father of my child, they all confirmed that, yeah, this is what happened. This is why she was running away all the time. This is why, like, she's been stealing her grandmother's medication. And it got so afraid that the same kind of abuse was gonna happen to her if I didn't get her out of my care.
So then what happened to your uncle?
My uncle got arrested, thankfully. Um, but the problem is that now he's out. He was only in there for. He got arrested for child molestation, and he only got served 3 years when he took 6.5 years of my life away. And after that, it got to the point where drugs became my only form of self-medication to try to numb everything out.
Okay. You told me when you were 6 years old, your biological father also sexually abused you. Do you want to share more about that?
Yeah, he came home after work one night, and he was gonna go after, he was gonna go after my older brother because he hadn't gone to bed yet. And I heard him yelling, and with the nightgown I was wearing, my dad picked me up, and what I thought was my dad was actually gonna let me sleep in his bed with him. And all of a sudden that's when it really happened. Was all of a sudden I couldn't move. I was petrified. And he started rubbing his hands all over my body, and that's when he started using his hands for penetration and everything like that. So it just got to the point where I was always sexually abused by some kind of male role model that was supposed to be in my life. Someone who was supposed to protect me, put me in harm's way. And it got so hard that I couldn't trust anybody. Even at the youngest age, I couldn't trust anybody. I couldn't respect anybody. I was afraid of everyone. And I couldn't even trust my own grandmother or my own mother to protect me.
So when you're 6 years old, that night, that's the only time, or happens all the time, a lot of times?
It was more or less every other night, because every other night was bath night. And that's whenever he ended up hurting me constantly. And when I decided to say no and fight back one time, that's when he decided to take a cigarette and burn me on the center of my chest, and I still have the scar to this day. And even my underarm. Because he was very violent. He beat on my two brothers. He beat my mom. He sexually abused me. And it's just, know really why they did it. I don't know what their reason was, but I have to state that when my mom said she has no idea what went on, I didn't believe her, because every parent notices a change from their child's personality. I was always an outgoing, outdoorsy kid, and then it changed from being outdoorsy to I never wanted to leave my own bedroom because that was my safe zone. And it got so hard one day that I was supposed to be 110 pounds at the time, but I was only 75 pounds because I refused to eat. I refused to even put liquids in me. Like, I was very surprised that I did not die at that time. Every time I've been molested, it was, no, if you're gonna do it to them, you're gonna do it to me. Like, you're not gonna touch my baby brother. You're not gonna touch my cousin. You're damn well not gonna touch me. And even though, yeah, a lot of people have told me that I should be proud of the fact that I was protecting them, it was the fact that the protection's the one thing, but I was also putting myself in harm's way. So I grew up only knowing abuse. And after that stopped, I ended up hitting high school, and I was already addicted to my grandmother's morphines and oxys, and it was anything to give me a quick mental numb. So, like, kind of like what alcoholics do. They drink to numb whatever pain they've been going through or they experienced. Well, I was popping pills to ignore the experience that all the experiences that I've had. What we classify street family is someone who takes care of us for just as if they were blood.
Yeah.
And my husband ended up, we got into a fight one night, and this would have been probably when I was 21, and he ended up, this was shortly after my younger brother passed away, and when I fell really heavy into drugs, and he saw the chance to give me a whole bunch of clonazepams because I was having a real hard time with it. And he waited till I was unconscious, and he came into my room, and he ended up undressing me, and I started fighting back, and he started throwing me around the room. And I had defensive marks and everything all over me, but for the longest time, I couldn't remember what happened. And, he ended up, because I had my room clean, and when my husband got back, the room was trashed. I was undressed from the waist down, and this guy couldn't even look my husband in the eye to tell him what happened. And I've always looked at it as, I've been a sexual abuse victim from the day I was born all the way up to even a couple years into mine and my current husband's relationship. And it was just, it would get harder and harder because it would re-implement that fear. And my worst experience was that because he ended up lying to the police officers about how it was me going after him for sexual relations instead of the other way around. So that was actually the year we ended up on the street. Because I looked at my husband like, I can't do this anymore. I can't stay in this house because of the constant memories and the flashbacks and the PTSD. So as soon as we ended up on the street, my drug use increased so I could numb everything out. And then people just started seeing me as a target. And there have been people who've tried to tell my husband that I'm a hooker, or I'm this, or I'm that, or I'll sell myself for drugs, and it's just it's not a life for anybody. Like, most people who end up on the street have always, and like most of us are actual victims of some extreme abuse or some form of trauma, and all of us get judged because of it. Whether or not, oh, they're on the street because of drugs. We're on the street because something bad happened to us that we can't let go of or we can't move on from. And we can't cope with it, so we'll use our rent money or we'll use whatever we can to figure out a way to numb that. And I feel that most of us are so wrongly judged that once someone finds out that whether or not we have anger issues or we have mental health issues or whatever, it's that landlord decides to say, no, we're not going to give him a chance, or we're not going to figure out a way to help them out. And it hurts because it starts to remind you of the reasons why you're on the street. And if it wasn't for my husband, honestly, I wouldn't be here today, because I've had so many attempts on my life. I've had so many, I've taken a lot of attempts on my own life because I can't mentally or emotionally function properly with what has happened to me in my life. I'm too afraid to reach out to a counselor or to reach out to someone that is actually there to help, because I don't want to be judged anymore. I don't want to be feeling like I'm just another paycheck, or like, it's just I don't want to be one of those stereotypical women who's only known as a victim.
So right now, how many years you on the street?
We're going into our 8 years. Come September, it'll be 8 years.
Okay. So right now, What do you, what is the drugs you mainly use?
Um, Currently I'm a heavy fentanyl and carfentanil and crystal meth addict. Um,
How heavy?
uh, and cost wise, probably anywhere between 500 to maybe $800 a day.
$500 to $800 a day.
And that's only if we like, cause this in the last couple of months, I've been trying to really wean myself off because the only way I get to see my daughter again is if I become sober. So,
So how come you can make a 500 to 800 a day?
it's different areas of panhandling. Well, like there's every city has the slum sections of their town to the richer areas to industrial. And what we have found out is the industrial sides of town are actually the higher paying areas. So we can do 3 runs a day and get maybe between $300 to $400. And it's it we don't always put all that money towards our drugs because lately it's always been put something aside just enough so we can feel normal, to where we can function, to where we're not like aching, hurting, or anything like that. And then the rest goes towards our food, our clothes, our tent, or anything else we need. And I've been an addict for about the last 6 years. I've never sold myself on the street. Um, the one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that I do still have a lot of pride and self-respect, and I can't give that up.
Mhm.
And I will never I will never give up my self-respect or my dignity just to make a quick buck. I'd rather sit there with a sign stating, I'm homeless, anything will help, food, change, anything. That, to me, that doesn't matter as long as I know I can survive till the next day.
Right now, how old are you?
I'm 29 years old, and come August 11th this year, I will be turning 30.
Do you have any plan for the future?
Um, my biggest goal and aspiration and my biggest passion has to be the culinary world. I have always dreamed of having my own food truck, working for myself. Um, I was on the verge of actually becoming a certified chef up until the point where my younger brother needed a stem cell transplant. And um, the school gave me the ultimatum of do your co-op and become a certified chef, or do the stem cell transplant. So I said, you know what? My education can wait. I'm going to try to save my younger brother's life because I was a 3 out of 6 match to try to get rid of this cancer. So for the last couple of years now, I've been looking for adult schools to where I can get my GED and then I can start looking for like any form of culinary schools and stuff like that, because it's still a big passion of mine. It's where I'm happy. It's where I feel like myself again. It's my zen zone. Like, I feel good kind of like feeding the world, because like going from having everything, like my stepdad, he is a certified chef. He came into my life at the age of 5, and I every night was in the kitchen with him. I grew up in the kitchen. My daughter, the same thing. She was always in the kitchen with me. It was honestly, it had to have been the happiest time of my life, because knowing that people do eat their emotions. Like, a lot of people do eat when they're happy. They grief eat and stuff like that. I want to do around the world comfort foods for people. Like, I want to hit the eight, like all the continents, and take their major main comfort food and condense it down to a food truck, and their the child's menu will be just a smaller version of that, and just drive around the country and stuff like that, and just like I said, feed the world. And because now, being on the street for so long, anything I have left over, I'm going to be giving free to the homeless, because it's just, I know what it's like to have everything and then have nothing at all. And I want to have that chance to give back, to always pay it forward. And honestly, that has to be my biggest goal, is to show people that there's a bottom to rock bottom, but there's always a way out.
Did you notice when you talk about your dream, the whole energy is just coming back to
Yeah.
you? All the confidence. It's so good.
It's because my dad's been a cook for almost 30, 40 years now, and I can even outcook him. I've kicked him out of the kitchen so many times. Like, when I'm in the kitchen, even my husband knows. I'm in the kitchen, he's on the grill outside. Like, that's my zone. It's something that, because it brings out the creativity. It's really something that really does truly make me happy, because it's seeing that the people enjoy the food that I've made is more of a thanks than anything else I can ever imagine.
All right. Thank you very much for your story. Thank you.